Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to part two of our video series on business management and entrepreneurship. Now, if you missed the first video, I highly encourage you to go back and watch it because we briefly talked about business managers. We introduced you to this video series and we discussed the roles of information management or information managers, and we looked at a couple different careers. Today's video, or part two, is going to focus on human resources. In other words, the area of human resource and human resource management. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. Human resources and human resource management is a fairly new concept in the world of business. When I say new, it's been used for a while, but the old model in business used to believe that personnel were part of productivity and performance and so on and so forth. So they were treated sometimes, in some cases, by some businesses, not all right, because there weren't businesses that didn't always define it this way, as kind of like machines, right? As they were just a part of personnel and the people that worked for you, and you kind of hired in and got them in just like you would a tool. And that kind of changed as businesses started to adapt to the human needs of people, okay? And some of the things that were brought about were various additional benefits like vacation time and sick pay and additional benefits like investment opportunities, so on and so forth, which we'll dive into a little bit later, right? So human resource management is the term we use to describe the systems of a business, right, that are for the management of the people in the business. Now, I'm not saying there are the managers, right? Because in some businesses, you might have an operations manager. You might have somebody overseeing the work being done, right? But what human resources does is they oversee the human element, making sure that the right staff is on board, making sure that the staff is qualified, so on and so forth. So the responsibilities of human resource managers fall into three major areas. And this is key for success in the business, because if you don't have the right people working for you, it's hard to be successful, all right? Kind of like if you don't have good teachers, it's hard for students to learn, okay? So the three areas of management are staffing needs. Staff is not that big, long stick that you whack people with, all right? That's not the staff we're talking about. Staff are the people, the personnel, the ones that work for you. Mr. C is part of the staff at Lake City Middle School, which is part of the business of education overseen by the district or school district of Columbia County, okay? So that's what the staff is. Anybody that works for somebody is part of the staff. Mr. Cooper is also, Principal Cooper is also a staff member, right? But he operates as the manager for this campus, okay? So we all got to have certain qualifications. Somebody has to double check and make sure that the policies are set forth that can say, hey, yes, Mr. C does have a degree and can teach a business class, right? So there you go, okay? There's also employee compensation and benefits. Believe it or not, and people aren't going to like this, I don't work for free, okay? I love sharing my knowledge, but my time has to be compensated because my time is valuable. If I wasn't being compensated for it, I'd be finding something else to do to make sure that my bills are paid. So we need to make sure that we're getting taken care of on that end, right? We work for pay. Now, the really cool thing is that some businesses may offer other things beyond pay, like additional benefits. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on, right? Additional benefits for working for somebody. So they are also, or human resources is also tasked with defining work or designing work. In other words, the human resource manager, right, for the and personnel manager for all of Columbia County defines my job, defines assistant principal's job, defines the cafeteria manager's job, right? All those jobs are defined by someone. So they define the work or design the work, which may often be overseen by somebody else, okay? Human resources are the gatekeepers of an organization, all right? So what the gatekeepers mean, think about this, right? Think about the old days when castles were about, right? And so like the king was in his castle, okay? And he lived there with his family and royalty, all that kind of good stuff, right? Well, sometimes these castles had big markets just outside or inside the grounds, okay? And there was a protected area, all right? So think about this, okay? How do you keep the bad element out of that castle, okay? Well, you got to have a gatekeeper hired, right? And that gatekeeper says, you guys can come in, you guys need to leave, okay? Or you guys got to stay out, right? They are the gatekeepers of an organization. And we'll look at that here in a few moments. Sometimes, and here's a fancy L word, if you see it underlined in the 8th grade, chances are you're going to need to know what it means. You're going to have to know what staffing means, employee compensation, various employee benefits. Here's a fancy word. If you're looking at it, all right, it's liaison, okay, liaisons. What a liaison does is they are a go-between between two people, okay? You might also hear the term mediator in the world of law, okay? So a liaison acts as a go-between between two elements. Okay, party over here wants something. Party over here wants something. All right, they both want to negotiate, okay, and come to the middle and come to an agreement on something. Haha, Mr. C covered his face, just like that. There you go. All right, so liaisons act as a go-between, all right? So that's really important to know. All right, more about human resources. Here we go. Human resource has a basic mission. Do you remember back on the first day of class, Mr. C talked about a vision and a mission, right? The vision is what you want to accomplish, and a mission is how you're going to accomplish that over a series of events or a long-term goal, right? Well, the basic mission of human resources is to acquire. Okay, think about what acquire means. They need to get, right? To develop, all right, and retain talent, okay? Talent in this case isn't like the ability to dance, all right? Isn't the ability to do magic tricks that nobody can see or the ability to sing well or play the guitar. That's not the talent that I'm talking about. The talent that I'm talking about here is the staff, all right? The people who are really good at what they do, right? They are talented at the job, okay? So you got to make sure that you have good people working for you. You got to make sure that not only they work for you, but they know how to work for you and can apply themselves even better. And of course, you got to make sure that when you get good people there, they stay with you. Okay? How are you going to do that? Well, that's the job of human resources. They have to figure it out. All right? They have to align the workforce with the business. Well, that makes sense, right? Okay. In other words, if I had a mechanic shop, right, and I did nothing but repair cars and service vehicles, right, chances are I need to make sure that somebody can count money really well, whether that's myself, okay, or one of the employees. And I got to make sure that the people working on the vehicles know what they are doing, right? Because that's important. Do you want somebody just to throw a wrench at your car and say, okay, it's fixed? All right. No, that wrench will probably leave a dent, right? So you got to make sure that you have talented workforce who are mechanics working in that business, as much as you got to make sure that you have good teachers, right, working in the classroom to make sure students are learning what they can, right? So if I was some guy who was halfway qualified, had a degree and studied aeronautics, right, that might be a good teacher or not, okay? It really depends, okay? Just because he knows how to do something doesn't make them a good teacher, okay? So you got to make sure that you have good elements of the business that align with the objectives of that business. Hope that makes sense. All right, next one. You got to be an excellent contributor. Look, if you're not doing your job, if you're not contributing to the business, right, chances are the business is not going to succeed. All right, so that's the basic mission, right? The basic missions. I guess I should put the plural in there, right? So the basic missions are two. Very good. This is a convoluted sentence. Let me tell you what this means, all right? Let's read it together real fast, all right? The personnel policies and procedures of the enterprise are closely linked with the achievement of corporate objectives and plans. Okay, corporate. Okay, well, I'll get into that in just a few minutes, all right? So, personnel policies, personnel. Mr. Cadle is personnel. He's a teacher, he's staff, but he's also personnel, right? The policies, in other words, the rules set forth for me, right? And the procedures of the business, and its enterprise is a business. In other words, the rules and procedures set forth for Mr. Cadle as a teacher, okay? And the procedures of the, overall state and district, right, are closely linked with the achievement, right, of objectives. It says corporate objectives or business objectives. You can put corporate, you can put business, you can put whatever word you want in there, right? Basically, my job, my objective, and the school board's objective of hiring me is to make sure you learn something, right? That's got to happen. Now, let's take that to the business world, okay? In the business world, if you have a salesperson working for you, right, the overall objectives and policies regarding people who work in sales, you got to make sure that people are willing to communicate. that they do their jobs, that they can be guided and coached, right? If you hire the right salespeople, chances are, if everything else is going really well, that business can be really successful. If you're selling something, if you're in the lawnmower business and you're selling lawnmowers, you need to have the right person to sell lawnmowers and know something about lawnmowers, right? So their policies, their procedures, and making sure they get the right people help the business succeed. Okay, that's what that big sentence means there. All right. Organizations who hire the right people and train them well will bridge the gap between failure and growth. You got to train your people if you're in HR, right? An entrepreneur has to make sure that the people are doing what they need to do. All right, so that's what their objective is, right? So if an entrepreneur, because we're talking about business management and entrepreneurship, right? If an entrepreneur hires the right people, trains them well, or makes sure they are trained well, right? And everything else is going on in the business will succeed and grow, okay? And here's the interesting thing. Problems with personnel don't care if you have a big business or a small business, right? Or in the middle business. Just like problems in school, it doesn't matter if you're in a big school with lots of students or a little school with a lot less students, right? You're going to find problems anywhere. It doesn't matter, okay? So human resources and personnel and administrators are always getting involved, all right? All right, oh, you can't see it because my picture's there. Can I make my camera go away real fast? Let's see, webcam, Control W. Haha, there it goes. No, you can't see it. Bugger, I should have fixed that earlier. Well, up there, you can kind of sort of read it, right? It says, the one guy is giving the interview, right? It says, all of your references say you play well with others, but there's nothing on your paper or documentation here about you actually doing any work. And then the guy being interviewed says, well, I can explain that, but first, how many times out of 10 do you think I could hit your wastebasket from here? So, here's the thing with this, all right? Let me go back to the regular screen here so you don't see me in the big screen because that's scary. Oh, yeah. Did you see that Mr. C's in his t-shirt today for Falcons? Yeah, it's because I'm recording this on a Friday and left my backup polo shirt at home. Congratulations. You get to see Mr. C doing a professional video in a work t-shirt. Moving forward. All right. Control W. Woo-hoo. All right. So, there might be a good place for this guy to work. Okay. There might be a great spot for him somewhere. It's up to human resources and personnel to figure out, is there a space for this guy to work for, and are they the right person to hire for this business, right? You've got to figure that out. Sometimes some businesses are yes, sometimes not so much, all right? All right, let's see. Next screen here. If I can make it clicky, go away. Next screen, thank you. All right, HR, roles and duties. Whew, that sure is confusing, Mr. C. What does all that mean? Well, take a minute. HRM means Human Resource Management. So I want you to consider all of the things around the bend here, right? So Human Resource Management, when it comes to these elements of a business, Human Resource Managers are responsible for that. If you're an entrepreneur, you either have somebody doing this for you or you are doing it yourself. That includes recruiting, selection, and introduction. In other words, recruiting is getting people to work for you, right? Selecting the right people to work for you and introducing them to the company and the job, right? Personnel administration. In other words, how do you make sure that people are getting paid the right thing, that taxes are paid? Did they get any additional benefits, so on and so forth? Are they getting trained correctly? Are they being developed to work for the company better? Is there any kind of additional reward and performance management for doing great jobs or having a good review or something equivocal, right? Maybe instead of a standard raise, there might be additional time considered for other things, right? It says talent management. In other words, the management of the people in the organization. What about this one? Succession and career planning. That's a really important one, right? Succession and career planning means, say like in a business, I know that the accounting manager is going to retire in 2 years. Well, as administrators, who is going to fill that person's shoes next? How are we going to train them? All right. You know, what can they do? You know, what are we going to do in the event that that person that we're training decides to leave, right? So succession and career planning, right? You got labor relations when dealing with maybe people who don't work with you directly but are contracted out to work for you. And, of course, overall planning, all right? So there you go. And I kind of run down that list right there. I already covered that, so I'm just going to go to the next slide. Payroll. Oh, yes, rolls. I like rolls, especially when they're covered in butter and served with steak. Not the kind of rolls we're talking about, right? All right, so payroll. Payroll can be considered one of two things. One, a list of all the company's employees and the amount of money that they are to be paid, all right? So in other words, at any meeting, an entrepreneur or a CEO or a business manager can say, okay, what was payroll for the month of blah, 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 right? Well, they're not going to say, well, Susie Smith was paid this, John Doe was paid this, and Emma Marie was paid this. No. They're going to give you the whole payroll. Everybody was paid this. This came out of the expenses, all right? That's the total amount of money paid for people working for them, okay? And then it's the total amount of wages and salaries paid by a company to its employees, all right? It could be over a year, so on and so forth. When it comes tax season, you're going to learn about this when you do accounting. If you ever go into accounting, that certain things have to be paid in certain orders, and they get qualified in certain ways, so on and so forth. Payroll is one of them, all right? Benefits. Ooh, here's a really good one. A benefit is a payment or can be defined as a payment or a gift made by an employer, the state, or an insurance company. What? All right? Hang on a second. It's an advantage or profit gained from doing something, all right? So here's what I mean by that, all right? Not only do people get paid, but they may have additional benefits by working for a specific company or doing specific functions. I'll give you an example, okay? Because I'm a teacher and we're in the teacher world, I can just go straight here, but I can tell you about other businesses as well, right? But it applies elsewhere, all right? By being a teacher and having so many people employed by the school board, there are a lot of good benefits that I get for insurance, okay? And insurance may cover me for different things. If I happen to get sick, right, insurance might cover me for a brief time. If I have to go to the hospital for an emergency, I don't have to pay for the whole hospital bill because insurance is going to offset those costs, right? Now, people who get insurance by themselves, right, it tends to be very, 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 very expensive, okay? Yeah, it's pricey, okay? However, the more people you have in a business, the less those expenses can be and the less expenses cost, all right? You have life insurance. In other words, you can see what it does there. So in the event that something happens to somebody, amount of money will be paid to individuals, right? You got health insurance, right? And that includes medical health, dental health, and vision health, right? So like I was talking about just now, I go to the hospital, they pay a certain amount of money, I'm only responsible for a smaller amount. Or Mr. C wears glasses, right? So because Mr. C wears glasses, I like to have additional vision insurance so that I can get my regular exams on my eyeballs, okay, to make sure everything is good, make sure my vision hasn't changed, and I can get a new pair of these every so often. Or if I decide to go back to contacts, right? I love contacts, I just haven't worn them in a while, right? And then of course, us in America, we like to have straight teeth and clean teeth, so we like to have dental coverage and dental insurance as well. There's also various disability coverages. That means in the event that something happens and I can't work or I can only work in a limited capacity for a certain period of time, there are additional things to help me out for that, okay? Now, not every business offer those, but those are things that a human resource department might want to offer its employees. Here's a good idea to consider, an additional benefit by being a teacher. I get my summers off. That's kind of cool, right? And so I not only do I get summers off, but I get 2 weeks off for Christmas and holiday break, right? I get Thanksgiving off, assuming that doesn't change this year, right? I get spring break, okay? And good federal holidays. Not every job offers that, okay? So that's an additional benefit by being a teacher, okay? There might be additional benefits by somebody else. Like I have a sister who earns additional bonuses when the overall company does really well. They spread the wealth and share it with the people of their business. That's kind of cool. That's a benefit, right? All right, so there you go. Oh, and it also says investment opportunities. If we ever get to investments and so on and so forth, we'll talk more about these. But basically, you got like stock purchases and mutual funds and pension plans and so on and so forth that you can look up on your own time. I'm not going to ask you about those on a quiz or a test. All right, so Mr. C, I really like what I'm hearing about human resources, and it sounds like you deal with people a lot. What would it take to work in that field? Well, I'm so glad you asked that. You do not have to have a college diploma to work in the field of human resources. You can start by being a human resource assistant, right? And then if you don't, or if you do have an additional certification, you can work as a labor relations specialist, or if you have like a 2-year degree and such. With a 4-year degree, right, a bachelor's degree, for big corporate businesses, you can work as a human resource specialist, training and development specialist, so on and so forth. And then with an advanced degree, you can work as an actuary. An actuary is actually a futures forecaster. Okay, based on what I know now, I know it's going to cost this much 10 years down the road with explained change. Okay, that's an actuary. And of course, you got human resource managers. All right. All right, so that brings me to the end of this particular video lesson. You can see you got a couple questions there to answer on Google Classroom. I believe we covered that. Yes, we did. We covered all those questions, so you shouldn't need any additional help from me. All right, so if by chance you're not interested in being an entrepreneur, okay, and if by chance you're like, well, I like business management, but I would rather work for another company than work for myself, there's nothing wrong with that. Some people choose that. So people who follow human resources usually have several characteristics. One, they are really good at working with people, okay? Two, they understand basic rules and laws about governing people, okay, and self, like what are the rules and laws set forth by the feds, the state, so on and so forth, about what I can and can't do within a business, all right? And then if you are good at understanding and working with rules set forth by individual insurance policies and programs and picking programs and so on and so forth, and then you're good at negotiating, okay, you will probably be really good at human resources. But the big thing is you got to be a people person, okay? If you're not a people person, human resources probably isn't the right gig for you, all right? So that comes to the end of video lesson number 2. Go ahead and stay tuned for video lesson numero 3.